Hey, hello, and welcome to the Green Stocking Society. I'm Shara, I'm a philosophy grad and I work in sustainable fashion, and today we are tackling the mammoth question of what even is sustainable fashion? It's multifaceted, it's complex, it's juicy. Let's get into it. Firstly, why does fashion have a sustainability problem? The textile industry is made up of lots of individual stages. If the fabric is cotton, for example, that cotton has to be farmed, picked, spun into yarn, dyed, printed, packaged and sent to the customer or to the store where it's being sold. At each stage, the manufacturers have a lot of options available to them in terms of how they want to do things, but some of those are way more environmentally damaging and worse for the people working for them, but a lot of the time they are also cheaper. One dump truck of textiles is burned or buried in landfill every single second. So fashion has a massive overproduction problem, and those clothes that are being overproduced are only being worn about once or twice before they're being thrown away. So that means that all of those sacrifices that the manufacturers are making in terms of the negative environmental impacts and the social and ethical impacts are only so that someone can wear that piece about twice before it ends up in the bin. That doesn't really seem fair. The industry is incredibly harmful and wasteful thanks to the recent rise of fast fashion. Fast fashion brands are the ones that are selling immense volumes of irresponsibly made clothing at really cheap prices and encouraging you to buy more and more and more because all of their designs are trend-led. So at the heart of it, sustainable fashion is a response to fast fashion. It's a movement wanting to change the industry so that clothes are made in a way that is better for the environment and for the people making them. Making fashion in a sustainable way is one of the steps that we can take to help combat the climate crisis. So I'm going to break this down into three parts. The first part is going to look at the supply chains of these brands, the second part is going to look at the marketing and messaging that they use, and the third part is going to be about you, your mindset and your attitudes. Firstly, let's talk about the supply chain. So this covers everything that goes into the making of your clothes, from the farming to the dyeing to printing and packaging. There's a lot of things that go into this process, such as the pesticides that are sprayed on the crops, the energy that is used to process the material, the chemicals that are used in the dyeing process. Every material has some sort of environmental impact. So when brands are choosing which materials to use and when you're choosing which materials to buy, you have to weigh up a few different things, such as how that material was made, is it biodegradable, what happens to it at the end of its life when you no longer want it, and also taking into account your personal values and the things that matter to you. One material that we definitely want to avoid is virgin polyester, which is really difficult because it's actually in 60% of the clothing that is made today. There are two major problems with using polyester to make clothes. For a start, polyester is made from plastic, which is made from fossil fuels, so it's no surprise that 10% of global carbon emissions come from the fashion industry, since 60% of our clothing is made from plastic. And secondly, every time that you wash a polyester piece of clothing, it releases microplastics into the ocean, which are then eaten by fish, which are in turn eaten by us. Overall, the best materials are things like recycled cotton, recycled wool, organic hemp, organic linen, and tencel, which is a really good alternative to polyester if you're looking for things like activewear. So these are all materials that are made from natural fibres, which is a good thing, but brands also need to be aware of how they are treating the planet and the people in the process of manufacturing these natural fibres. So cotton, for example, which is the second most popular choice for making clothing after polyester, is biodegradable and it's a natural fabric. However, in the making of it, a lot of pesticides are used and it's an incredibly thirsty crop, so it uses a lot of water. And the farming of cotton also comes with a lot of ethical labour issues. Unless, of course, it's organic cotton and certified by GOTS, which means that it doesn't use any pesticides, it uses less water, and the supply chain is audited for a range of social and ethical responsibility criteria as well. Viscose is another really popular material. It's the third most popular after polyester and cotton, and it is a natural fibre. It's usually made from wood pulp, which is great, except for the fact that because it's become so popular, it's actually fueling deforestation. Some brands will be able to confirm whether the wood pulp that they use comes from responsible sources, such as if it's FSC certified, but if they don't address it, then it's probably best to give viscose a miss as well. An important final point on the materials is that we also have to take into account the whole lifetime of that material, not just stopping at the point where it gets into the hands of the customer. So what will happen to that material after that person throws it out or they no longer want it? Will it biodegrade if it's a natural fibre, or like polyester, will it just never break down and remain with us forever? Having an end-of-life solution for a material inherently makes that material much more sustainable. This is where we get into the territory of circular fashion. So this is the idea of designing things from the start to be sent back to the manufacturer to be remade into new clothes again and again, so that the material is saved from landfill and so that a lot less energy is required to make those new products. If a company is seriously talking about their circular initiatives, then that's really great, as long as it's not the fact that they're just using their recycled polyester collection and calling it circular. There's quite a lot of the word circular being thrown around in greenwashing at the moment, so make sure that if a brand is promoting itself as circular, it's not actually just promoting some recycled materials that can't be recycled again and again, like recycled polyester, and it's actually putting things in place in its supply chain and designing things from the start so that the products can be sent back and actually reused again and again and again. That is what true circularity is. I would love to do some more videos on circular fashion and going a bit deeper into the circular economy, so if you're enjoying this video so far and you'd like to hear more about that, then don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss it. But it's not just about the materials. Sustainability also has to factor in ethical working conditions. So the workers that make our clothes have to be paid fairly, they have to be working in conditions that are good for them, they have to be working free from discrimination. A lot of fast fashion brands have already come under fire for reports that have found that they were not treating their workers as they should have been, and that is despite their massive global profits. Boo-hoo! I'm looking at you. Often these companies don't own the factories where their clothes are being made, so when it comes down to making changes to make their garment workers feel safer or giving them better wages, they can kind of just say, well, we don't own the factory, so there's not that much that we can control. Which brings us nicely onto traceability and transparency. This is probably one of the biggest problems for corporations that have been built without traceability and transparency in mind. So if they can't trace their materials right back to the source and they don't know exactly which factories and exactly which workers are in their supply chain, then obviously they can't really do much to improve the conditions for them or reduce environmental impact. So the most sustainable brands will be able to trace their materials and their products all the way back through their supply chain and know what's going on at every individual stage. And they'll be able, and they'll probably also be encouraged to share that with their customers as well, to show them that they are being mindful of traceability. The fact that these processes and these parts of the supply chain are so far removed from us is a really big issue that contributes to where the fashion industry is today. When we buy clothes, we don't get shown the people who makes them, we don't get shown the offcuts that are left on the floor of the cutting room when these garments are cut, we don't see the massive amounts of chemicals that are being washed into our waterways and affecting the really delicate ecosystems there due to the dyeing process. We don't see any of this, and a lot of the time fast fashion brands will actively be trying to hide that and to keep you ignorant to these things because that's what serves them. The only thing that you actually see is the style, the colour and the beautiful flawless models that these brands put on their marketing images to convince you to buy the product, and this idea that they've built up around the kind of person that you will become if you buy and wear their products. So traceability is one thing, it's having that view of what's going on in every part of your supply chain, and then transparency is what you actually do with that information and communicating that. So obviously if a brand doesn't have the ability to trace its materials and its products through all these different stages, then they're not going to be transparent about it because they don't have the information. So if a brand isn't being forthcoming about this kind of information, then it's probably because they don't have it and they don't know it. One of the best examples of traceability that I've seen is from the carbon negative wool company Sheep Inc. So when you get a product from them, every single one has this little button that you can tap with your phone, which will show you the entire supply chain that that product has gone through, when it went through it, and exactly where it was at what point. And you also get to name your sheep, which is an adorable add-on. One thing that can really simplify everything to do with this more technical, ethical side of the supply chain is accreditations and certifications. So there are quite a few certifications that you can look out for that mean that the company and the products have been audited for certain sustainability, ethics and social responsibility criteria. Some common ones that you might see a lot are, for example, B Corp, GOTS Organic Cotton, SA 8000, Standard 100, FSC Certified, Carbon Neutral, Cradle to Cradle, and Global Recycled Standard. Not all certifications are created equal, so if you want me to do another video going a bit deeper into which ones are the most reliable, then do let me know that in the comments. It's important to note here as well that there is quite a big cost to getting these certifications, which means that a lot of smaller brands will not have the funds to be able to get them, even if they are doing things the right way in their supply chain, so be mindful of that as well. And that brings us on to marketing, which I believe is really important. I think it's really important to see how a brand is building their community and whether they are building sustainability as an inherent sort of pillar within their brand community, and encouraging their customers to learn more about it and trying to educate them on these issues. So for example, is the brand talking about the working conditions in their factories? Are they showing behind the scenes photos of their garment workers? Are they telling you about how they are minimizing waste or anything like that? And are they doing it outside of things like Fashion Revolution Week or on Earth Day? Because if they're not, it's just greenwashing. Some brands aren't even putting the material that the clothes are made from onto the product pages on their website. That's how much they value knowing and sharing that information with their customers. If they don't tell you, they probably don't care. Also, is this brand putting out any messaging around rewearing, upcycling, repairing, anything that is basically about you making your clothes last longer and taking care of them rather than wanting you to just buy more and more and more? And do they have any resources around how to fix up your clothes and deal with common issues such as like a missing button or a stain or things like that to lengthen the amount of time that you spend wearing and loving these clothes rather than throwing them in the bin? This is all part of a general sort of mindset shift that has to happen for us to make fashion truly sustainable. So look for brands that seem to have this messaging of like, okay, we know that anything that we make is going to have an environmental impact, but we also know that people need to wear clothes and, you know, people want to feel good in the clothes that they wear, so we are going to make clothes, but we're going to make clothes in a way that is right for people and for the planet, so that if you are having to buy clothes, if you are choosing to buy clothes, then you have these sustainable and ethical options. That's a really cool message for the brand to be putting out. That is a lot more like genuine and honest. What brands do during Black Friday, for example, is a massive indicator of where their values truly lie. So are they having a massive sale and just promoting overconsumption, or are they doing something completely different, like very anti-consumption, telling people to not buy, or are they doing something that is giving back to people or to the planet, such as saying something like buy one and we'll donate one to someone in need, or buy one and we'll plant 20 trees, something like that. And that Black Friday conversation ties into a wider point around sales and discounts in general. When you go to Shein's website, you'll see, for example, that the minute that you step onto the website, the first thing that you get is a pop-up that shows you 3 or 4 discounts that you can apply to their already incredibly cheap clothes. Having massive sales all the time is just encouraging overconsumption, and it also makes you question how much they're paying their workers if they can afford to sell you clothing for £1. Finally, after we've looked at the supply chain and the messaging of these brands, there's one more factor that I want to talk about, which is you and your mindset and how you approach the clothing in your wardrobe and when you're looking to buy something new. The industry as a whole needs to move away from the take, make, waste model of production. And that needs to happen on a systemic level. But that doesn't mean that you can't make better choices individually as well, and that those don't add up. One nuance that we need to add into the conversation is price and also inclusivity. So sustainable brands will have a higher price point, and they should do, but that does make them a little bit less accessible, and they also have a bit of a problem with size inclusivity. If you do have the means and you've watched this video to this point, meaning that you do also have the facts, I really don't think that you can claim ignorance any longer once you've been confronted with this stuff, and I do think that once you become aware of it, you do have a responsibility to make better choices. And thankfully, we have loads of options available to us now to be able to choose better. So first of all, only buy something if you actually really need it. So before you buy something, think about your existing wardrobe. Will you be able to pair these items with things that you already have? Will you be able to layer it for different seasons? How versatile is it going to be in your wardrobe? And also, if you're shopping online, you can leave it in your basket, come back in a few days' time, and if you really still want it, if you're really still thinking about it, then you can get it then. But that just stops you impulse buying as well, and also buying based on trends that might not even be around in like 3 days' time. When you do shop, make sure to look out for the certifications and the materials in the label, using all of the information that we talked about before. And also, if you can, it's much better to support smaller and more local businesses. A lot of these will have services like made to order, so you can actually have clothing fitted to your particular measurements, which means that it will fit you perfectly and you'll treasure it a lot more because it will be more extra special because it was made just for you. Options like made to order are a little bit more expensive, but I honestly do encourage you to just invest and see it as, like, literally view it as an investment. Invest in pieces that are high quality, that are made with good materials and from brands that have really strong sustainability credentials, and then just wear it again and again and again and again. Like, if you buy something for £100 but you wear it 100 times, that is £1 per wear. And please don't throw away clothes that you already have. I think sometimes there is a bit of a thought process that, oh, fast fashion is terrible, I have loads of fast fashion in my wardrobe, so now I have to throw it all out. Like, please don't do that. That's kind of the worst thing that you could do. Instead, make sure that you are getting the most possible wear out of those clothes that you've already purchased, like before you became aware of all this. Obviously, there is a big amount of time in our lives when we're just not aware of any of these things. Like, I probably didn't start thinking about these things until I was like 22-ish, so I wasn't aware of the issues. So I just bought, you know, what everyone else buys. I bought from like H&M, from Primark, and so I still have a lot of those clothes. But when I realised that I wanted to be buying more sustainably made clothes, then I didn't just throw away all the old clothes I had because they would just end up in landfill. So instead, just make sure that you're re-wearing the clothes, finding new and creative ways to wear the pieces that you already have. And do remember that sustainable fashion shouldn't be about buying more stuff that's made better. We also need to generally slow down our consumption. Often it's just about using what you have and getting creative with it. Also, please don't shame other people for their choices, and instead just lead by example. There are much better ways to create change than to shame people out of buying fast fashion, because they probably won't. If you want to keep learning about sustainable fashion, which I highly recommend because it is so nuanced and there is so much to cover, like entire books have been written about these topics. So if you want to learn more about it, then do follow some of these amazing accounts for the latest news and more nuanced discussions. And I will also leave a pinned comment in the comments below so that we can get a thread going of more creators and brands and organizations that are helping fashion to become more sustainable, so that we can all learn together. And finally, like, remember, it's a process that we're all involved in. You don't have to have it figured out all from day one. And if you make a mistake, just remember that the whole industry is not set up for you to succeed in the first place. And in the meantime, you can support campaigns like the Clean Clothes campaign, Labour Behind the Label, and Fashion Revolution, so that they can continue driving for change in policy, continue campaigning for workers to be paid fairly, and for fast fashion brands to pay up and start paying for some of the environmental destruction that they are causing with their harmful practices. We need everyone to be working to be 10% more sustainable rather than having a few people being 100% sustainable. Alright, I'm going to finish that video there, but if you found it useful and you enjoyed it, please don't forget to hit that like button so that it can spread to even more people, and also don't forget to subscribe for more sustainability, fashion and feminism content from me. Stay kind, and I'll see you in the next one.